Hi, welcome back to the How She Made It Summit, where we are talking about what it really takes to be a wealthy woman. I am your host, Tiffany Scott, the founder of You, Me, She Collective and Sister Suppers. And today we have the gorgeous Katya Morozova. I think I said it right.
You got it! Yay!
And she helps women shortcut their path to lasting love and find the right guy. Oh my gosh, the work you do is so wonderful and so needed in this world. Thank you for coming and contributing to this series. We met recently through a friend of a friend here in Austin, and I really felt like we really connected on a soul level, and we spoke really intently around the work that you do. So I'd love for you to share more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor. And yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that we got connected through our friend. And I'm very happy to be here. And I'm also really excited to see all of the other women's interviews and hear what they have to share. Yeah, so I help women shortcut the path to lasting love and reclaim their power with men. And I find that a lot of women give their power away to men, and it's not something that that they do on purpose. You know, it's not something that we're like, oh, I'm just gonna give this away. You know, I think it's just something that we're kind of wired and conditioned into as children, as teenagers, as adults, and as a byproduct of the culture that we live in. And so, you know, my mission is that women feel powerful with men, that they, you know, they don't feel like dating is such a drag, or that they have no control over their relationships, or that they have no sense of certainty about, you know, how a man is going to be on a date, or what is he going to do next, or do I feel safe in this situation, or do I even have a say in this relationship?
Right.
You know, so my mission is to really give women a voice in the area of love and have them feel empowered and also just free to love. Like, love should be something that's cool, you know, and exciting, and something that we look forward to. And as little girls, we would look forward to it. We'd create this dream life and this dream fantasy of how we wanted it to go. So I really am committed that we get that back, you know, that we can dream again, that we can have the kind of love that we envision in our lives.
Yeah, and it really is truly possible. And I think when you speak about the way that we're conditioned through our culture and things like that, we are constantly brought up with the fairy tale kind of ending, right? Like Prince Charming rescues us and all this sort of thing. And then we feel like that we need to almost be the princess, or, you know, be that kind of woman in a relationship that puts everyone else first and puts their man first. And I know that I've had really beautiful relationships. I've been very fortunate and lucky to have very beautiful relationships throughout my life, where I've had the opportunity to still have independency in my relationship, but I still fell into that way of what I would refer to as losing myself in a relationship and forgetting the truth and essence of who I am. Like, got really enveloped into their life and the way that they wanted to live and all those sorts of things. And I see it is something that a lot of women really fall into unwittingly and unknowingly until they wake up one day, like I did, and I was like, where am I and what am I doing and where did Tiffany go? You know?
Got it. Yeah.
What has been your experience in your journey that has felt for you to really take this path of helping women to connect with their essence and own their independence and find that true love?
Well, I can take you back to the beginning. So, you know, when I was, I think 17, I was in a relationship that ended up in abuse, like physical abuse, and you know, there was a lot of like, it was an older man, and he pretty much had control of the relationship. Like, I was so young, he was way older than me, and so there were things that I just couldn't see. And he took full advantage of that. You know, like, he shouldn't have been with me. He should have walked away when we met. But he didn't do that. And so I went on this journey with him that I was just, everything was so new and novel, but that relationship made me, I made a lot of decisions that didn't serve me. And then it ended up in such a way that would just scar me for years. You know, like it ended in physical violence, and he decided to basically tell my secrets to like all of our mutual friends. So not only was I abused, but then I was ostracized from my community. And that was very, well, painful is one word to describe it, but it was earth shattering. Like I didn't really know where to go from there. I was very lost. And coming out of that relationship, I didn't, it wasn't like, oh, I had this big realization, like now I'm going to turn my life around. It was actually a really painful journey. You know, after I got out of that relationship, I kept getting into relationships with men that did not serve me. They were not nearly as bad as that one, but they were just with guys who were non-committal, who didn't really care about me. And it was just over and over and over and over again, you know, just like this pattern of, you know, giving my power away to men, and not standing for what I wanted, and maybe not even being really clear on what I wanted, like not owning that, hey, I could have a great relationship. I think at that point, I didn't even believe that was possible. I was so far gone that I thought, I don't want to have kids. Like kids weren't even on my radar, you know. I just didn't think that was possible. I thought I was going to be a bad mom. Like there was all kinds of beliefs that were just like, you know, swimming around that did not set me up to continue making good decisions. And it wasn't until I actually I met a guy who would become my boyfriend, and for some reason, I don't know how we stumbled across each other, but for some reason he picked me on OkCupid, and we went out on some dates, and I just started to realize, hey, this person was very different, very different. He was very curious about me. He was very curious about how I worked, what my thoughts were, what my beliefs were, my outlook on the world. And he was actually this catalyst for me to start to transform my life. He was a coach, and he had already done a lot of self-development. He had very closely inspected who he was as a human being. And it was very, like, he was a great guy, but it was also terrifying to be with him because he was pushing me out of my comfort zone with men. And so he invited me to do this transformational workshop, and I had always wanted to do something like that. And I said, okay, you know, it's like very kind of quick decision. I said, all right, let's do it. I've always wanted to do it. I didn't know anything about it. I just went into it. And the night before, I almost had a panic attack because I knew something was going to drastically shift for me.
Yeah.
And it did. It was a 3-day workshop, and I came out of it a different human being. And I really saw how I was the source of the pain. Like I was the source of the pain because all of those things had happened to me in the past, but I was still holding on to the pain and the hurt and the resignation, the disdain for men that I was willing to let go of because they were protecting me. They were protecting me from opening myself up again. So that also opened me up to, you know, I really want to help people. I really want people to have this freedom, this newfound freedom that I had created in a very short amount of time. So that's a little bit about how that started, and I can share a little bit more with you.
Yeah, no, that's really, really helpful, because I love hearing about people's journeys into the experience. You know, you talk about the wounds, right? Often from our own wounds, when we come out the other side of them, we want to help people that may be experiencing something similar or have experienced something similar. And I believe that's a lot of where our purpose work comes from and why we're put here. or we choose to be here, whatever our beliefs are, of helping one another and healing from within, but healing each other, or showing the light and the guide and the path. And it's part of the reason why I put together this interview series, is because I really do believe that when we share our own story and our own journey, we are so inspired. And because we look at each other and say, you know what, if she can do it, I can do it, whether it's a similar story or the similarities in the story, or the pain you can associate with, there's always something within us that we can associate with and go, you know what, I can get through this. And so I love that you were sharing that, from a young age, you got in a relationship with an older guy, and then it was kind of self-perpetuating after that. And then someone came into your path that showed you a different way. And I'm a firm believer that there's never any coincidence. Like, I believe he was put into your path, on your path for a reason, but you were ready to receive that as well. And so now you have the opportunity to be put in, to stand in other people's paths as well. So I think it's really beautiful. And you also have this innate knowing and inner wisdom from working through those different pains, and then, doing the self-development and connecting with who you are, and going on that journey that will then help others as well. So what are some of the things that you've done, or possibly even continue to do, to get connected with what you really truly want in a relationship?
What are the things that I've done? Okay, got it. One of the things that I do is, I guess it's two things. I always write down what I want in a relationship, especially after I end a relationship. So when a relationship ends, it's this opportunity to create something new. It's just like anything. It's like leaving a job, or some kind of loss, right? Like, loss is always an opportunity to create something new in your life, and also refine what you want next. So, when a relationship ends, it's kind of like, okay, something here wasn't working. And so you want to reassess, like, what wasn't working, and how can we shift that to be in alignment so the next one does. And I think a lot of people, they don't do that. They fail to do that. It's more of like an automatic thing. Like, oh, okay, this relationship ended. I don't want to be alone, so let's find the next one. And there's not a lot of like critical thinking that happens in that in-between space that would have them set themselves up for a healthy relationship, a more evolved relationship. My theory is that every relationship that we have should be better than the last. And that we should be growing towards our, like, the ultimate relationship, whatever that looks like, however way that's set up for your specific needs and desires. So something that I do is I always reassess my values, and I'm never too keen on holding on to something that isn't working anymore. It's funny because in my early 20s, I didn't think too much about, like, I want a man who's financially sound, and I didn't think about that kind of stuff. And now it's funny to think that I actually care more about that, because to me it was always like, oh, well, that's superficial, why should I need that? Because I'm independent, I don't need that. And now I realize, like, well, it's not really about the money. It's really about, like, being with a man who I can count on, who I can rely on, someone who's responsible, someone who can provide a sense of security and certainty, and be a rock, be a foundation for a family that I want to create. And so I think it's important to just constantly be looking and questioning your own beliefs, and also questioning, like, why do you want that? Like, why is that really important to you? When you say, it's funny, I actually just got off a client call, and she really wants a G-Wagon. We were talking about the G-Wagon. And she says, I'm not giving myself permission to want this thing. I'm like, okay, great. Why don't you take a look at why do you really want that thing? And she would tell her coworkers that she wanted this car, and they would be like, oh, you know, kind of scoff at her, like, oh, why do you want this expensive luxury vehicle? And then when we started to get into why, she's a tall lady. She's like 6'1", and she was telling me how this car has 4 more inches of headspace than any other car on the market. I'm like, that's a pretty solid reason to want the car, and it has some functional value. So I'm using that as an example, but you know, sometimes the things that we want, we don't give ourselves permission to want them.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't think through those things. Like, there's probably a reason why you want what you want. And then also looking at the other thing, like the more superficial things that you want, and being able to dissect them and actually say, okay, do you want to keep those things on the list, or is that something worth tossing out? Like, I'm all about getting to the bottom of, there's probably one thing that you're really looking for that's going to be at the foundation of what you want in a relationship.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's one of the things that I do, is I like to help people get to the bottom of the why, like what's really driving them to have a relationship, and what does it look like, and what are the basic needs that that relationship is going to fulfill, that's going to like really nurture your heart.
Yeah, and I love the way that you're sharing, and this is so true with anything in our life. When we have an experience of adversity, right, where it just it's tough, and we come out the other side, it gets us so much clearer on what it is that we really, really want. We get to reassess and reevaluate. Okay, that didn't work. I didn't like that. Now I want to normally it's up leveling.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And you were saying that I believe that the next relationship should be better than the last. Otherwise, we're just in a perpetual cycle, and we're not actually growing or learning anything either.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you shared about when you were younger, how you know, money wasn't something that you wanted in your partner to have, and now you're older, you do, because you want to have a partner that, you know, can, it sounds like, have some stability and help with the family and things like that. And I think often as women, we can go either way. It's either we feel money hungry because we don't want to be, you know, that woman that just stays at home and has the rich man. Some of us do, and that's fine, right? You know, we marry into the wealthy was kind of such a stereotype and stigma, and probably still is, rightly or wrongly, to have judgment. But so there's that part, and then there's also the other part, and this is what I experienced, was that I wanted to be totally I went so the other way, that I wanted to be totally independent in a relationship, that I didn't ever want to have to rely on my partner's money, right? And so I swung a whole other way and became the breadwinner. And then I realized that, wow, this is what it's like in the traditional days for a man that has to provide for his family. And so it gave a whole other insight into, okay, do I really want to be the breadwinner of the family? And again, this is without judgment, whoever chooses this way of life. But experiencing those different things has given me more insight into the way that I want to show up financially in a relationship as well.
Yeah. And you actually brought up a really interesting point. Is there's like these societal norms that we're supposed to live inside, and so relationship is a great place to explore what you want, you know. So if you're not constantly redefining what it is that you're looking for, then you're not really having relationship be yours, like something to own, like something that you can create and make entirely customized, you know. Like, there's not a stock relationship for people to live into, you know. It's two people coming together from different backgrounds, different upbringings, different parents, different biology, different, you know, everything is different, and they're coming together, and there's like this expectation that it's just supposed to work, and that it's supposed to look a certain way.
Yeah.
And I think that's what creates problems for us.
Yeah.
And so there's really so I love what you shared about, I went on this journey, I got into all these different types of relationships, and I discovered what I want, and I discovered what I don't want. And now I'm going to align myself with that, and it also gives you an access point for communicating to your partner. Because once you're clear on what you want, you can actually start having discussions like, hey, these are the things that I want. Is this something that you're also looking for? Versus let's ride this chemical high until we, get to the problems, and then we'll deal with that later.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's really key. That was really key for me in my marriage, in my second marriage. I had to really connect with what is it that I want second time round, because there was a lot of shame for me in my first marriage that it didn't work. I had to really move through that. So relationships aren't always easy, and again, we're conditioned into this fairy tale way of being, like it should be the Prince Charming and the white picket fence and all the perfectionism, and it's just not. And I have to say, like, my husband is my biggest teacher, and I'm so grateful for that. And sometimes I'm really not. Sometimes I just don't want the challenges of it. But that point that you shared about, you get to choose in every moment. You get to choose in what you want in your life and in your relationship, in your love life, in your wealth life, in your money life, like all of it. And I actually sat down one day and I wrote down what I wanted for myself in every facet of my life and in my relationship. And then I read it to him. And it was one of the scariest things that I've ever done, because he could just turn around and say, no, I don't want that. But at least then he knew my truth and what I really wanted. And then it was his choice to say yes or no. Because sometimes we think that we know, and we think that therefore then they know, right, our partners, and they're having their own journey.
Yeah. That's the biggest I guess relationship killer is the assumption that they know, that you know anything about them, or that they know anything about you.
Yeah.
The moment that you're like, I know who this person is, or they're doing that to you, that's the end of intimacy.
Yeah.
Because relationship really is a constant discovery.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we're speaking about wealth here, and I think relationships is a huge part of creating wealth, because if you're out of balance or out of sync or out of integrity in your relationships, whether it's a partner, lifelong partnership or marriage or whatever it is, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, if there's an imbalance there, I really do feel like it affects everything else in your life. It affects the money coming in, it affects your sex life, it affects your health, it affects the way that you, your mindset, all these sorts of things. So I think the work that you're doing with women is so, so important, because from what I'm understanding from what you've sharing with me today and what you've shared before, is that it's really connecting the inside out piece first, and then getting really clear on what it is that you want. And then you can really call in the person that you really desire, because we unconsciously manifest and create all the time. And so you can call in the wrong partner without even knowing about it. But if you have clear idea of what that is, then you can call that person in. Is that kind of the work? So am I drawing the right assumptions there around the work that you do?
Yeah. And one of the powerful things of getting to what you want is also you are in a sense asserting your power. Like, you're in a sense asserting something, because typically when women are dating and like they're clear about the guys that they don't want, they're typically pretty clear about that. But it's what happens when you're in front of the guy that you do want and you start shaking in your boots, And I think that that's where women really get they get hung up you know, and they don't really know like what's happening. Why can't I attract the guy that I do want? And the way that I see it is there's something in the way, like you're not giving yourself permission to have what you want, right? Or you're now in front of this guy who kind of, you know, you've checked everything off on your list and he fits the mold, but then you don't feel worthy of him, you know? So when you start to really know yourself, know who you are, know what you want in a relationship, then you start to naturally act from that. And men read that. Men can see when they're in front of a woman who is clear, you know, who is clear who she is, who she's clear about what she wants. And she's also clear about what she will and won't stand for. And that's the kind of woman that high quality men want. You know, they want women who, I'm going to say this not so gently, but they want a woman who has a backbone. You know, like as women, we can be so apologetic and so, you know, apologetic about our needs, about our desires. And I'm not harping on women for this. I think we're wired that way. Like when we were talking about this cultural conditioning, you know, we're wired to be the nurturers. We're wired to be the supporters. We're wired to be beside the man, behind the man. You know, we're in positions that support, that nurture. Like, I'll look at the jobs that most women have. So it's not something that comes naturally to women. It's something that we have to develop. And so when we start developing this muscle about getting clear on what we want and going for it and being a demand for it, then how we show up to men, and especially to high quality men, it is different, right? It shifts who we're being.
Yeah.
And then it starts to shift. It's not like some woo-woo magic. It's scientific, you know, like there's a science behind it. And so that's what I'm clear about, that like when women really start to own their power and reclaim who they are and kind of break out of that conditioning, you know, that's not only biological but social, then we become leaders for other women, and also we become the kinds of, like, my ultimate goal is that we become the kinds of women who create power couples, you know, who create leadership in our communities, and have the kinds of relationship that people are like, yes, I want that.
Yeah. I think there's also a perception, and I think some women have experienced this, where they kind of swing the other side, right? So they become assertive, they really know what they want, they speak their truth, and then they feel like they can't attract the man because the men are intimidated by their strength and you know, their career or whatever it is. And then in the discussions that I've had with women in my life that are very self-assured and are very confident and are very successful is, you know, when I've had the discussions with them about, well, I can't find a man because he's threatened by me. And I'm like, well, you're not looking for the right type of men then, right? Because the right type of man wouldn't be threatened by a woman that is self-assured. And I think that's really what you're talking about, is that when you are self-assured and you are confident, you do know what you want, then you will attract a man that is attracted to that.
Right. And I think, but you're also pointing at something which is like underlying the, you know, being self-assured and knowing what you want is also, there's like the delivery that comes with that, you know. Can you also be vulnerable, you know? Can you also be vulnerable in your conversations with men? Like, right. So I think there's many, huh?
I think that's a really good point. Vulnerability, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that goes both ways for the women who, I think that's under the foundation of what we're talking about, because the women who don't have the, let's say, like clear boundaries, give their power away to men, they, on some level, they're not being vulnerable because they're not being truthful to themselves. You know, vulnerability looks like, it doesn't have a, how do I say this? It doesn't have like a one size fits all. Like vulnerability for one person may look completely different from what vulnerability looks like for someone else. You know, because being not overly self-assured. I don't know if there's such a thing as overly self-assured, but being overly, let's say, demanding or wanting a lot of things is also a mode of protection. It's like, okay, well then I'm just going to push everyone away, you know?
Right.
So I think it goes both ways. I think all women deal with different things. You know, I know that when I got out of a long-term relationship, and I started to, and I used to work in the film industry, and so I had a lot of power in my professional life. I was making really great money. I had a clear direction for where I was going, and I got out of this relationship, and I was so hurt that my response to that was, I'm going to attract guys who I feel like I have control over. And that's what I did. I started dating guys who I knew I wasn't going to end up with. I knew that they weren't the one for me, but I had control in that relationship, whereas the relationship prior to that, I didn't. I felt like I didn't have any control.
Yeah.
And so, and with those guys, you know, I just would walk all over them. I would do whatever I wanted. I would assert myself without considering their feelings.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, one side of that.
Yeah.
So, and it took something to get through that phase of my life as well, where I could start to feel like I could open up and be vulnerable and let a man lead a relationship, because I knew that I really wanted that. I knew that I didn't actually want to be in control and be the dominant one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that piece on vulnerability is a really key point, and I love that word keeps coming up through this series and in conversation. And I want to attribute Brene Brown has done an incredible job around bringing vulnerability and shame to the forefront. But you're right, there's so much strength in vulnerability and really showing up in a way that is vulnerability that's unique to you as well. I think that's a really beautiful and key point. Yeah. So, what would you've shared a lot of information here and a lot of really great tips, but what do you feel like for you, when you bring again, this is a Brene Brown thing, but you're really wholehearted in a relationship, for the women that are listening that want to find that ideal guy, because there is no perfect, right? But have an idea of what they want. Are there some things that they could do today to really start to bring that forth into their life?
You cut out for a second. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So for the women that are listening that want to bring forth the ideal man into their life, is there something that they could implement today, that they could start doing today to start calling that man forth?
Okay, got it. Yeah. So what would they start doing today that would call him forth? Okay, yeah. I got it. Yeah. What I would do is I would write down, I don't think it has to be anything fancy, you know, but I would just start writing down a list of the things that they want, you know, what are the principal things that they want. And for now, let the list be totally expansive, write everything. But then as you keep writing, write it again, and then write it again, and then write it again, and get to the core of what it is that you really want, and let that be 5 statements. You know, one of my clients, she's on Hinge or something like that, and she was telling me that she was kind of hemming and hawing about going on a date with this guy because he's a couple years younger than her. And so we got to the source of okay, you know, she's having a great conversation with him. She clearly wants to go out with him. Is it really worthwhile to toss this guy aside because he's a few years younger? And her main principle for getting to a relationship is she wants to be with someone who's up to something in his life. That's something that's really important to her because she's very career driven. She is very focused on building teams and teamwork inside of her business. And she loves people. So she needs someone who's going to be up to something in his life. And that's a very simple statement, but it's also a very large statement. And if she leads with that, she's going to find someone who's going to be a good fit for her. If she leads with, well, this guy's a few years older, or he's not tall enough, or he's not this, or he's not that, she's going to be in a world of pain, right? So you want to get to the source of like, what is your number one value, or what are your top 5 values? Like, what is at the core of this human being? Is he kind? You know, is he driven? Is he purposeful? Is he conscious? You know, are you someone who's really committed to health and you want him to be like really adventurous and exploratory and you know, takes care of his body, right? So look at like, what is it that you really value and what's the match that you want in a partner?
Yeah.
And the second part to that is, okay, so now you want this particular guy, right? Like you're clear on the vision of this person. Who do you have to be that's going to be a match for now this guy? Absolutely. Are you living up to the standard that you want for yourself? If this guy came across you tomorrow, is he going to want to be with you? Someone said this quote, and oh gosh, I can't think of it. Never mind. But yeah, you want to look and be really honest. Like if he showed up tomorrow and he went on a date with you, are you someone that would be dateable?
Yeah.
So I think there's like a level of personal responsibility that comes in as well, is look outward and get clear on what you want, and then look inward and say, okay, am I there? Am I there? Because there's been plenty of times in my life where I could very clearly say, no, I'm not there. I'm not there, and this guy would not choose me. And it's not some kind of judgment on myself. It's just, it's like more of an honesty. Like, okay, there's something for me to shift.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because often when I've looked at my own relationship and I want him to show up in a certain way, I have to reflect of like, okay, am I showing up that way? And often I'm not. I'm really not. So I really hear you when you say that. So it's almost time to wrap up, because actually I'm like, oh my God, I think someone else is going to jump on this line. We've got another interview after this. So quickly, because I've been so enthralled with this conversation, your free gift, share about your free gift.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I am giving away an attraction alignment mini session. So it's a 30-minute call with me where we'll really dig into, again, like kind of recapping what we already talked about in this call, but really what is it that you want, what's at the core of what you want, and what's getting in the way of you having what you want in the realm of relationship. And so I'm going to give you some tools on how to clear that out of the way. And that's really what that looks like.
Oh my gosh.
You can,
So 30 minutes of your time, complimentary, they can come on and you can help them through where they're getting stuck and how to get unstuck, basically, give them some tools. Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Well, this was so informative, and it's just really great to see you again. And thank you so much for saying yes to this series. Your work is so important and so uplifting. And I also want to say, like, you know, you really help women attract men, but women that want to attract women can totally apply these principles as well. It's for anyone, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Attract women, like it goes all ways, and you're a testament to showing up fully in that as well. So thank you, and I can't wait to share more of you with this community as well.
Thank you. I've enjoyed our conversation, and you're just a wonderful interviewer. So thank you for being the space of just openness and creating this conversation. And yeah, I'm excited to share this with other people. And And I'm really excited to see what everyone else has to bring to the conversation. So thank you again for allowing me to be a part of this.
Thank you.